It was supposed to be a simple good deed. Rescue the muddy stray from the side of the road, rush into the vet, go home. But the second you drag that dog onto the metal table, the lights explode, the vet faints dead away, and you realize you didn't rescue a pet. You just invited a naked, lethal alpha king into your life, and he has a terrifying message just for you. Only you can fix me. Welcome to Linas Romantasy collection. To my loyal pack, welcome home, and to my new listeners, get ready for the ride of your life. If you love spicy, witty werewolf romance, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Now, let's do a quick roll call. Tell me which city or country you are listening from in the comments below. Let's get into the story. Chapter 1. The Roadkill That Wasn't. If the universe had a suggestion box, Jinkyung Park would have stuffed it full of complaints by now. Specifically, she would have filed a formal grievance regarding the incompetence of contractors who thought load-bearing wall was merely a suggestion and the ungodly weather in Briarcliff Bluffs. Rain hammered against the panoramic roof of her matte gray Polestar 2, sounding like 1,000 angry fingers tapping for attention. Jin gripped the vegan leather steering wheel, her knuckles white. It was 11 p.m. She was tired, hungry, and currently fantasizing about strangling the electrician who had wired the wrong junction box at her latest restoration site. "Just get home," she muttered to herself, the soft hum of the electric engine the only thing keeping her sane. Get home, open a bottle of soju, and complain to Kimchi until he falls asleep. She took the shortcut through the Blackwood Reserve, a winding stretch of road flanked by towering pines that looked ominous even in daylight. Tonight, in the torrential downpour, it looked like the opening scene of a horror movie she would definitely switch off. Her headlights cut through the gloom, illuminating wet asphalt and dancing shadows. Then, they caught something else. A lump. A massive, muddy, unmoving lump on the shoulder of the road. Jin's foot slammed onto the brake pedal before her brain even registered the decision. The Polestar skidded slightly on the wet leaves before coming to a silent halt. She stared through the windshield, the wipers frantically slapping back and forth. "Please be a log," she whispered. "Please be a really ugly, furry log." She cracked the door open. The smell of wet pine and ozone hit her instantly. She grabbed her umbrella, popped it open, and stepped out into the deluge. Her heels sank into the mud. It wasn't a log. Lying in the ditch was a dog. No, not a dog, a beast. It was the size of a small pony, with matted dark fur that looked black in the night. It was covered in mud and what looked suspiciously like burns. Jin approached cautiously. Most people would have run. Most people would have called animal control and locked their doors. But Jin was a restoration architect. She couldn't walk past something broken without calculating how to fix it. "Hey!" she called out, her voice sharp to hide her trembling. "You alive, buddy?" The beast didn't move, but its chest rose with a ragged, shallow breath. Okay, don't die on me." Jin crouched down, ruining her cream-colored slacks instantly. "I am not equipped to deal with a corpse tonight. I have a 9 a.m. meeting." She reached out, her hand hovering over the animal's neck. The fur was coarse, and the heat radiating off the creature was intense, like standing next to a radiator in midwinter. She felt a pulse. It was slow, thudding against her fingertips like a heavy drum. "Right, you're coming with me." Getting a 200-pound, unconscious animal into the pristine back seat of a Polestar was not in the owner's manual. It took Jin 20 minutes of cursing, pulling, and leveraging physics. She sacrificed her luxury backseat blanket, wrapping it around the muddy creature. "You owe me for detailing," she panted, shoving the beast's massive hind legs into the car and slamming the door. She was soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face, and her car smelled like wet dog and copper. She jumped into the driver's seat, hitting the ignition. "If you wake up and bite me," she warned the rearview mirror, "I will sue you." The beast didn't respond, but a low, pained whimper vibrated through the cabin. It sounded heartbreakingly human. Jin's cynicism cracked, just a fraction. She floored the accelerator, speeding toward the only place open at this godforsaken hour, Dr. Evans' 24-hour veterinary clinic. Chapter 2. The Vet Faints. Dr. Evans was a man who preferred hamsters. Hamsters were easy. They fit in your hand, they ate seeds, and they rarely looked at you like they wanted to consume your soul. When Jin Kyung Park kicked open the double doors of his clinic at midnight, looking like a drowned rat and screaming for a gurney, Dr. Evans knew his night was about to take a turn. "I need a stretcher! Now!" Jin barked, wiping rain from her eyes. Dr. Evans scrambled from behind the reception desk, knocking over a display of flea collars. "Miss Park? Is it Kimchi? Did he eat a sock again?" "No, it's not the corgi, it's a stray, I think." They rushed the gurney out to the sleek gray car idling at the curb. When Jin opened the back door, Dr. Evans froze. The animal taking up the entire back seat wasn't a dog. It looked like a wolf, but broader, denser, like a prehistoric ancestor of a wolf that hadn't gotten the memo about extinction. "Good Lord," Evans whispered, his glasses fogging up. "Is that a mastiff mix?" "Less identifying, more lifting," Jin snapped. Together, they hauled the unconscious creature onto the stretcher. It was dead weight, heavy and dense as lead. They wheeled it into exam room 1, the metal wheels squeaking in protest. Jin stood back, hugging her wet arms around herself, watching as Evans turned on the overhead surgical lights. The harsh white glare illuminated the extent of the damage. The animal's fur was singed in patches, revealing angry red skin beneath. There were no bite marks, no cuts, just bruises that looked like they had been inflicted by tree roots or rocks. "His temperature is off the charts," Evans muttered, placing a hand on the animal's flank. "He's burning up, 106 degrees. If he were a normal dog, his brain would be boiling." "Is he going to make it?" Jin asked, surprising herself with the tremor in her voice. Evans grabbed his stethoscope and leaned down to listen to the heart. "Let's check the vitals. Maybe give him a sedative just in case he wakes up grumpy." The moment the stethoscope touched the beast's chest, the room's atmosphere shifted. It wasn't a subtle change. The air pressure dropped so sharply that Jin's ears popped. The high-voltage surgical lights overhead flared blindingly bright, buzzing like an angry hornet's nest, and then— pop! The bulbs shattered, raining sparks and plunging the room into absolute pitch-black darkness. The beast's eyes snapped open. They weren't brown dog eyes. They were glowing, molten amber, bright, intelligent, and terrifying. Dr. Evans gasped, staring directly into those eyes. A low growl started in the creature's chest, a sound so deep it rattled the instruments on the stainless steel tray. It wasn't a growl of aggression, it was a growl of power. Pure, unfiltered, apex predator dominance. I, Dr. Evans stammered. His face went pale, drained of all color. "Alpha," he squeaked. "Alpha what?" Jin asked, stepping forward. "Dr. Evans?" The vet didn't answer. His eyes rolled back into his head, his knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the linoleum floor with a soft thud, fainting dead away. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Jin groaned, throwing her hands up. "Great. Just great. Another man who can't handle a little pressure." She looked from the unconscious vet to the beast on the table. The beast was looking at her. The amber glow in his eyes was fading, replaced by a glassy, feverish haze. And then, the impossible happened. The sound of snapping bones filled the small room, like dry branches breaking in a storm. Chapter 3. Only You Can Fix Me. Jin had seen many things in her career as an architect. She had seen historic mansions crumbling into dust. She had seen structural failures that defied physics. But she had never experienced terror like this. In the darkness, a wet, grinding sound filled the small room, the sickening noise of snapping bones and shifting muscle. "Hello?" Jin whispered, backing away until her spine hit the cabinets. The emergency backup lights flickered on with a low, red hum, bathing the room in eerie shadows. Jin blinked, trying to make sense of the shape on the table. Her brain refused to process the data. Where a massive wolf had been lying a moment ago, there was now a man. A naked man. And not just any man. He was huge, easily 6'4", with shoulders that spanned the width of the exam table. He was built like a gladiator carved from bronze, every muscle defined and twitching with residual tremors. His skin was tanned, scarred, and flushed with the fever that had been burning the wolf. Jin covered her eyes with one hand, peeking through her fingers. "I am hallucinating. I've been working with paint thinners too long. This is a stress dream." The man groaned. He tried to sit up, but collapsed back onto the metal, his breathing ragged. He was clearly in agony. He turned his head, his dark, sweat-dampened hair falling over his forehead. He looked at her. Those eyes, still amber but human now, locked onto hers. The intensity of his gaze hit her like a punch to the stomach. It was predatory, desperate, and confusingly intimate. "You." His voice was a wreck, gravel grinding against granite. Jin lowered her hand, her survival instinct warring with her curiosity. "Stay back," she warned, grabbing a bottle of disinfectant spray as a makeshift weapon. "I have chemicals." The man ignored the threat. He reached out, his hand trembling. "Come here." "Absolutely not," Jin said, her voice rising an octave. "You need to put some pants on, sir. This is a respectable establishment." He moved faster than a feverish, injured man should be able to move. In a blur, his hand shot out and clamped around her wrist. It wasn't violent, but it was inescapable. His grip was like a steel cuff. He pulled her toward the table. Jin stumbled forward, colliding with the edge of the gurney. She was inches from his face now. She could smell him. Rain, pine, musk, and something electric, like a thunderstorm about to break. It was the most intoxicating scent she had ever encountered, and it made her knees wobble. He leaned his forehead against her stomach, his skin searing hot through her wet blouse. He took a deep, shuddering breath, inhaling her scent. "The pain," he rasped, his voice vibrating against her ribs. "It stops when you're near." Jin stood frozen, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribcage. She should run. She should scream. But his vulnerability pinned her in place. He looked up at her again, his eyes pleading, stripping away her defenses. "Help me," he growled, the command woven into the plea. "Only you can fix me." The words hung in the sterile air, heavy and significant. Then, his eyes rolled back and he passed out cold, his head lolling onto her shoulder. Jin shoved him off, stumbling back. She stared at the unconscious, naked stranger on the table, then at the unconscious vet on the floor. "Fix you?" she whispered, hysteria bubbling in her chest. "I'm an architect, not a miracle worker, and definitely not a therapist." She looked around the room. Panic set in. She couldn't explain this. No one would believe her. She grabbed a surgical drape from the counter and threw it over the man's lower half, because she was a lady, damn it, and then grabbed a notepad. She scribbled a note. "Found him on the road. He fainted. So did you. Good luck." She stuck the note to Dr. Evans' forehead, grabbed her purse, and sprinted out of the clinic, leaving the naked mystery man and the unconscious vet behind. She peeled out of the parking lot in her Polestar, driving as if the hounds of hell were snapping at her tires. Chapter 4. The Hallucination. 1 week later, Jin sat at the kitchen island of her Auntie May's house, staring deeply into a cup of black coffee as if it held the secrets to the universe. "Let's review the data again," Jin said firmly, tapping a pen against her coffee mug. Across the table, Kimchi, her Pembroke Welsh corgi, sat with the posture of a disappointed school principal. He stared at her, then let out a long, heavy sigh that fluttered his lips. "Don't look at me like that," Jin snapped. "I am a woman of science. Mass conservation laws state that a 200-pound wolf cannot turn into a 200-pound man. Therefore, we go with Theory B. She held up a finger. The lights exploded. In the pitch darkness, the dog, terrified by the noise, bolted out the door. At the same exact moment, a naked squatter who had been hiding under the exam table stood up. It's the only logical explanation. Kimchi sneezed. It sounded remarkably like bullshit. Jin groaned and dropped her head onto the cool granite counter. I know it's weak. A squatter with a fever of 106 degrees? Who smells like ozone? But the alternative is that I picked up a werewolf, Kimchi, and since I don't live in a YA novel, I have to stick with the squatter theory. She was staying with Auntie May while her own apartment underwent emergency fumigation. A tenant in 4B had tried to start a mushroom farm that went horribly wrong. Auntie May's house was a cozy, clutter-filled bungalow that smelled perpetually of sesame oil and fabric softener. It was usually a sanctuary, but Jin hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those amber eyes. She felt the heat of his skin. She heard that voice. Only you. Aish, Jinja! Jin shouted, sitting up. Get out of my head! Auntie May walked into the kitchen, wearing a floral visor and holding a basket of laundry. She was a tiny woman with a perm so tight it could deflect bullets, and a smile that hid a matchmaking agenda of military precision. Who are you shouting at, Gina? Auntie May asked cheerfully. Is it a boyfriend? Did you finally find one? No, Auntie. I'm shouting at the dog. Kimchi is a good boy, Auntie May said, dropping a piece of dried pollock into the dog's mouth. Kimchi accepted it graciously, shooting a smug look at Jin. He doesn't need shouting. He needs a father figure, and so do you. I don't need a father figure. I need a caffeine IV, Jin muttered, standing up and smoothing her pencil skirt. I have to go. The firm is assigning me a new client today. Apparently, he's some big-shot billionaire who bought the old Drivas estate. Drivas? Auntie May's eyes widened. That old spooky castle on the hill. People say ghosts live there. Ghosts I can handle, Jin said, grabbing her laptop bag. Ghosts don't refuse to pay invoices, and they don't try to micromanage my blueprints. She bent down to scratch Kimchi behind the ears. The dog tolerated it for exactly 3 seconds before walking away to lie on his orthopedic bed. Love you too, you little traitor, Jin said. She grabbed her keys. She was determined to have a normal day. A boring, professional architectural day. No wolves, no naked men, just concrete, steel, and contracts. She had no idea that Normal had left the building the moment she picked up that stray on the side of the road. Chapter 5. The New Client. The conference room at Park & Associates Architecture was designed to intimidate. It was all glass walls, chrome accents, and a view of the city skyline that screamed, "We charge by the hour and it's expensive." Jin adjusted her blazer, checking her reflection in the glass. She looked professional, sharp, competent. The dark circles under her eyes were expertly concealed with concealer. He's waiting inside, her boss, Mr. Henderson, whispered, looking unusually flustered. Be careful with this one, Jin. He's intense. He specifically requested you. Requested me? Jin frowned. I've never worked with him before. He saw your portfolio on the Briarcliff restoration. Just go in, and don't be too sarcastic. He owns half the city. Jin rolled her eyes internally. Don't be sarcastic. Asking a fish not to swim. She pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped inside. The man was standing by the window, his back to her. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that was tailored to perfection, straining slightly across broad shoulders that looked suspiciously familiar. Mr. Drivas? Jin said, her voice practicing its professional lilt. I'm Jin Kyung Park. I'll be your lead architect. The man turned around slowly. Jin's portfolio slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a loud thwack. It was him. It was the stray. It was the naked guy from the vet. He looked different, clean-shaven, hair-styled, wearing clothes that cost more than her car, but there was no mistaking the jawline sharp enough to cut glass, or the sheer size of him. He seemed to suck all the air out of the room just by existing. And the eyes. those amber eyes locked onto hers with the precision of a sniper. He didn't look surprised. He looked satisfied. "Miss Park," he said. His voice was deep, a baritone rumble that she felt in the soles of her feet. It was the same voice that had growled in her ear. "I've been looking forward to meeting you properly, under better circumstances." Jin's heart was doing gymnastics in her chest. Her brain was screaming, "Abort mission!" But her feet were glued to the carpet. She quickly bent down to retrieve her portfolio, using the moment to compose her face. "Deny till you die, Jin. Deny till you die." She stood up, forcing a polite plastic smile. "I'm sorry, Mr. Drivas. Have we met? I believe this is our first consultation." Cal Drivas took a step toward her. The air pressure in the room dropped again. The hairs on her arms stood up. He stopped just inside her personal space, close enough that she could smell that signature scent of rain and ozone. He tilted his head, a faint, knowing smirk playing on his lips. "You don't remember?" he asked softly. "I have a distinct memory of you calling me a mangy stray and threatening to sue me for detailing your car seats." Jin's face burned hot. "I have no idea what you're talking about. You must have me confused with another architect who drives a Polestar and has a temper." Cal chuckled. It was a low, dangerous sound. "I never forget a cent, Miss Park. Or a debt. You saved my life." He extended a large hand. "Callum, but you can call me Cal, since you've seen me at my worst." Jin stared at his hand. If she touched him, she knew that static shock would happen again. She knew this was a terrible idea. She reached out and shook his hand. Zap! A spark of electricity, visible and blue, snapped between their palms. Jin jerked her hand back, gasping. Cal didn't flinch. He just smiled, his eyes glowing faintly. "When can we start?" Chapter 6. Auntie May's Approval. The morning of the site visit, Jin was running on 3 hours of sleep and an inhuman amount of espresso. She was currently staying at Auntie May's house in the suburbs, a place where floral wallpaper went to die, and the smell of sesame oil was permanently etched into the drywall. "He is coming here?" Auntie May asked, practically vibrating with excitement. She smoothed down her apron, which read, "Kiss the cook, or else." "The billionaire client? To my house?" "He insisted on picking me up, Auntie," Jin muttered, shoving her feet into her steel-toed work boots. "He's controlling. It's a red flag. He probably wants to make sure I don't flee the country before signing the contract." "Controlling means he cares," Auntie May corrected, adjusting a bowl of pears on the counter to look more feng shui. "Or it means he is rich. Either is good." A low rumble, deeper than thunder and smoother than a luxury engine, vibrated through the front window. A sleek, black SUV that looked like it had been designed by NASA pulled into the driveway. It was massive, armored, and cost more than the entire neighborhood block. "Oh my," Auntie May whispered. Jin grabbed her hard hat. "Don't feed him. Don't interrogate him. Just wave." She opened the front door just as Callum Drivas stepped out of the vehicle. He was wearing a casual button-down with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that looked like they could strangle a bear. Or break a table. Or both. "Good morning, Miss Park," Cal said. His voice was a rich baritone that seemed to drop the ambient temperature of the porch by 5 degrees. He looked at her with that intense, unblinking focus that made Jin feel like she was the only person on Earth. "Morning," Jin clipped. "Let's go. I charge for travel time." But before she could hustle him to the car, Auntie May appeared in the doorway, beaming like a lighthouse. "Hello! You must be Mr. Cal. I am Auntie May. Come in, come in. You look hungry. You are too big to be skipping breakfast." Cal blinked. The terrifying alpha of the Iron Ridge pack looked momentarily confused by the tiny Korean woman waving a ladle at him. I ate, ma'am." "Nonsense. You look like you need protein." She grabbed his bicep, which was as hard as a steel pipe, and dragged him inside. To Jin's horror, the 6 feet 4 inch billionaire followed meekly. Inside, Kimchi was waiting. The corgi sat in the middle of the hallway, his stubby legs planted firmly. He took one look at Cal, sniffed the air, and let out a sound that was less of a bark and more of a demonic gargle. Gruff! Cal froze. He looked down at the dog with genuine hurt. Is that the corgi? That's Kimchi, Jin sighed, leaning against the doorframe. He's a judge of character. Usually he just sighs at people. The growling is new. Congratulations, you've made an enemy. Kimchi waddled forward, sniffed Cal's expensive Italian loafer, and snapped his jaws inches from the leather. Cal flinched. He actually flinched. He looked at Jin, his amber eyes wide. Why does he hate me? I haven't done anything. He smells the dog on you, Jin said, keeping her face neutral, though her heart hammered. From your own pets, obviously. Auntie May shoved a plate of galbi jim, braised short ribs, into Cal's hands. Ignore the dog. He is just jealous of your height. Eat. Cal looked at the ribs, then at Auntie May. He smiled, a genuine, dazzling smile that transformed his scary face into something devastatingly handsome. Thank you, Auntie. This smells incredible. Auntie May grabbed Jin's arm and whispered loudly in Korean, If you don't marry this one, I will write you out of the will. Look at those shoulders. He could carry the groceries in one trip. Auntie! Jin hissed. I speak Korean, Cal said softly, tearing into a rib with disturbing efficiency. Jin froze. You do? Business electives, Cal lied smoothly, though his eyes danced with amusement. And I agree. I am excellent at carrying groceries. Chapter 7. The Manor of Doom. The drive to the Drivas estate took 40 minutes. The interior of Cal's SUV smelled like him. Rain, expensive leather, and that crisp ozone scent that Jin was trying very hard not to find addictive. So, Jin said, breaking the silence as she tapped on her tablet. Tell me about the property. Why did you buy it? It's been on the market for 5 years. The listing described it as historic charm, which usually means asbestos and ghosts. Cal kept his eyes on the road. It's been in my family for generations. We lost it, legally, some time ago. I bought it back. Sentimental value. Dangerous for the wallet. It's not just a house, Cal said, his voice dropping. It's the anchor. For my family, but it's rejecting us. Rejecting you? Jin raised an eyebrow. Like spitting out your furniture? Or just bad plumbing? The foundation is unstable, Cal said, dodging the question. The mood in the house is wrong. People get angry when they stay there too long. Agitated. Jin looked out the window as they passed through the wrought iron gates of the estate. The atmosphere changed instantly. The sunlight seemed to dim, filtered through ancient, twisted oaks that clawed at the sky. The manor loomed ahead. It was a monstrosity of Gothic revival architecture, dark stone, pointed arches, and gargoyles that looked a little too realistic. Ivy strangled the west wing, and the front steps were cracked like spiderwebs. Wow, Jin deadpanned. It really is Dracula on a budget. I half expect a hunchback to come out and offer me a lantern. Cal parked the car. Be nice to her. She listens. The house? Yes. They stepped out. The air here was heavy, charged with static. Jin felt the hairs on her arms stand up. She walked up the cracked steps, her heels clicking loudly in the oppressive silence. She placed a hand on the heavy oak door. It swung open before she pushed it. Jin pulled her hand back. Okay, automatic doors, fancy or creepy. It knows you're here to help, Cal murmured, standing right behind her. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating off him. He was like a walking furnace. They walked into the foyer. It was grand, dusty, and freezing. The grand staircase was rotting in the center. The previous contractor, Cal said, his jaw tightening, said the structural integrity was compromised beyond repair. He wanted to bulldoze it. Jin walked to the center of the room. She spun around, taking in the vaulted ceiling, the blocked energy flow, the sheer wrongness of the space. But beneath the rot, she saw the bones. They were good bones. "Bulldozing is for cowards," Jin said, pulling out her laser measure. "This place isn't broken, it's just sick." She turned to Cal. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite place. It wasn't just client satisfaction, it was hunger. Not for food, but for her competence. "Sick," he repeated. "Can you cure it?" "I'm a restoration architect, Mr. Drivas. I fix things men break." She pointed her laser at the ceiling. "But it's going to cost you. This isn't a renovation. It's an exorcism of bad taste and worse engineering." Cal took a step closer. The air pressure dropped again, that cabin pressure sensation popping Jin's ears. "Name your price," he growled softly. "I don't care about the cost. I just want it fixed." Chapter 8. The Contract. They moved to the library, the only room with furniture that didn't look like it had been chewed by rats. Jin set her laptop on a heavy mahogany desk that was probably worth more than her college tuition. "Here are my standard rates," Jin said, sliding a digital document toward him. "Plus a hazard pay clause because I saw a gargoyle move and I'm 90% sure your plumbing is haunted." Cal didn't even look at the numbers. He stared at her. "Double it." Jin paused. "Excuse me?" "Double the rate. And I want an exclusivity clause. You work only on this project until it's finished." Jin frowned. "Mr. Drivas, I have other clients. I can't just drop—" "Triple it," he interrupted. His voice was calm, steady, and utterly unyielding. "Triple the rate, full exclusivity, and you have free reign, no budget cap on materials." Jin's brain short-circuited. Triple her rate meant she could pay off her student loans, buy Auntie May's hip surgery, and get Kimchi that ridiculous gold-plated collar he didn't need. "Why?" Jin asked, narrowing her eyes. "Why me? There are bigger firms in the city, firms with armies of interns." Cal leaned forward, placing his hands on the desk. His knuckles were scarred, the skin rough. "Because you didn't run." The air in the room grew heavy again. "You didn't run that night on the road," Cal said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You dragged a 200-pound predator into your car because you refused to leave it behind. That is the kind of loyalty this house needs." Jin swallowed hard. He was talking about the wolf. He was admitting it without admitting it. "I thought it was a dog," she lied weakly. "A very large, ugly dog." "You knew it wasn't a dog when you got to the vet," Cal countered, "and you still made sure I was safe before you ran." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a fountain pen. He slid the contract toward her. "Sign it, Jin. Fix my house. Fix the mess." Jin looked at the pen. She looked at Cal. Every instinct she had screamed that this man was dangerous. He was a walking forest fire. But the loneliness in his eyes, the same look that Beast had given her before passing out, hooked something deep in her chest. "Fine," she said, snatching the pen. "But if I find one more flea on my upholstery, I'm billing you for a new car." She signed her name with a flourish. "Deal," Cal said. He reached out to shake on it. Jin hesitated. Not again. But it would be rude to refuse. She gripped his hand. Crack! A static shock, louder than a pistol shot, snapped between their palms. A spark of blue light arched from his skin to hers. The desk lamp flickered and blew out with a pop. Jin yanked her hand back, clutching it to her chest. Her palm tingled, a warm, pleasant hum traveling up her arm and settling in her heart. Cal didn't pull away. He looked at his hand, then at her, his pupils blown wide, swallowing the amber iris. "Interesting," he murmured, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. "The house approves." Chapter 9. Demolition Day. 3 days later, demolition began. Jin stood in the center of the Great Hall, wearing her white hard hat, a high-visibility vest over her blazer, and holding a clipboard like a weapon of mass destruction. "Stop!" she yelled. The construction crew froze. These weren't normal contractors. Cal had insisted on using his own guys. They were all massive. Every single one of them was over 6 feet tall, built like linebackers, and moved with a strange, fluid grace. They also ate lunch, raw steaks, at 10 a.m. Jin marched up to the foreman, a guy named Rogan who had biceps the size of her head and a scar running down his neck. "Rogan," Jin said, craning her neck to look up at him. "What is that?" Rogan looked down, blinking slowly. He seemed terrified of her, which was ridiculous considering he could probably throw her through a wall. It's a sledgehammer, Miss Park." "I know it's a sledgehammer. Why are you using it on a load-bearing partition? Do you want the roof to come down and flatten us all into pancakes?" Rogan shuffled his feet. "The Alpha, Mr. Drivas, said we need to open up the space." "Mr. Drivas pays the bills." Jin poked Rogan in the chest with her pen. "I make the rules. If you touch that wall again without my explicit permission, I will make you sand the entire floorboards with a toothbrush. Do you understand?" Rogan gulped. "Yes, ma'am. Sorry, Luna. Miss Park." "Good. Now go take down the drywall in the east wing. Gently. If I see dust, I want it apologized to." From the balcony above, Cal watched the scene unfold. He was leaning against the railing, a mug of coffee in his hand. "You're enjoying this," Jin accused, spotting him. She marched up the stairs to confront him. "I am," Cal admitted, his eyes gleaming. "Rogan is the toughest enforcer in my company. He once fought 3 men at once. You just made him whimper." "Competence is terrifying to the incompetent," Jin said, brushing dust off her sleeve. "Your guys are weird, Cal. They move too fast, they don't sweat, and they keep sniffing the lumber." "They are specialists," Cal said vaguely. "Very dedicated to the quality of wood." "Right. Well, tell your specialists that if they don't wear their safety goggles, I'm firing them. I don't care how big they are." Cal stepped away from the railing, closing the distance between them. The hallway was narrow, forcing Jin to look up. "You like control, Jin." "Someone has to be in control," she shot back, refusing to back down. "Otherwise, the roof falls in." "Maybe," Cal said, his voice dropping to that velvet rumble. "Or maybe you just haven't met someone strong enough to handle the weight for you." Jin's breath hitched. "Is that a structural metaphor, Mr. Drivas?" "Interpret it however you like," he said, taking a sip of his coffee, his eyes laughing over the rim. Chapter 10. The Heat Source. By mid-afternoon, the weather had turned. A cold front from the mountains slammed into the estate, dropping the temperature to near freezing. Rain lashed against the windows, turning the construction site into a mud pit. Jin was shivering. She had forgotten her heavy coat in the rush this morning and was currently wrapped in a flimsy trench coat that was more fashion than function. Her teeth chattered as she inspected the window frames in the library. "The thermal seals are blown," she muttered to her voice recorder, hugging herself. "Drafts everywhere. It's freezing." "You're cold," a voice said from behind her. Jin turned. Cal was standing there. He was wearing a thin black t-shirt, just a t-shirt. His arms were bare, his skin glowing with warmth. He looked like he was standing on a tropical beach while she was in the Arctic. "Are you insane?" Jin asked, her teeth clicking. "It's 40 degrees. Put a jacket on." "My metabolism runs hot," Cal said. He walked over to her. As he got closer, Jin actually felt the wave of heat coming off him. It was physically palpable, like opening an oven door. "That's not a metabolism," Jin said, stepping into his personal space purely for survival. "That's a nuclear reactor. Do you have a fever?" She reached up on tiptoes and placed the back of her hand against his forehead. His skin was scorching. Cal froze at her touch. His breath hitched. He closed his eyes for a second, leaning into her cool hand. "You're burning up," Jin whispered, concern overriding her snark. "Is this from the accident? The illness?" "No." Cal opened his eyes. They were swirling with gold. "This is normal for me, for my kind." "Your kind?" Jin asked, leaving her hand on his forehead. Billionaires? Something like that. He reached up and gently took her hand, pulling it from his forehead, but he didn't let go. He held her icy hand between his two massive, scorching palms. The heat seeped into her bones instantly. Better? He asked. You're a walking furnace, Jin murmured, looking down at their hands. His were rough, scarred, and twice the size of hers. A very expensive, very muscular furnace. I have my uses, Cal said dryly. Don't get cocky. You still have bad taste in curtains. Cal laughed, and for the first time, Jin didn't pull away. She stood there in the freezing library, letting the alpha warm her hands, while the storm raged outside and the house creaked around them, seemingly purring in approval. Chapter 11. Kimchi versus the Alpha. The next morning, Jin arrived at the Drivas manor with a passenger. Auntie May had a dentist appointment, which meant Kimchi, the corgi with the soul of a grumpy tax auditor, had to come to work. Behave, Jin warned as she unbuckled his seatbelt. Do not pee on the historic limestone. Do not judge the construction workers. And definitely do not bite the client. Kimchi sneezed, jumped out of the Polestar, and immediately trotted toward the front door like he owned the deed to the property. Inside, the manor was buzzing with activity. The specialist crew was dismantling the rotted staircase. Sawdust hung in the air like gold dust in the morning light. Cal came down the hall to greet them. He looked frustratingly good for 8 a.m., wearing dark jeans and a gray t-shirt that clung to him like a second skin. He spotted the dog and paused. You brought backup, Cal said, a wary expression crossing his face. Auntie had a root canal, Jin explained, clipping a leash onto Kimchi's collar. He's harmless, usually. Cal crouched down. It was a fluid motion, his knees bending deeply, putting him at eye level with the dog. He extended a hand slowly, palm up, the universal gesture of peace. Hey, buddy, Cal said softly. We got off on the wrong foot. Let's try again. Kimchi stared at the hand. He sniffed the air. His nose twitched. He smelled the alpha scent, the ozone, the pine, the raw power of a predator. To a dog, Cal probably smelled like a grizzly bear wrapped in a thunderstorm. Kimchi didn't back down. Instead, his hackles rose. He planted his stubby legs, curled his lip to reveal small but sharp teeth, and let out a vicious, high-pitched snarl. Snap! Kimchi lunged, his jaws snapping shut millimeters from Cal's fingers. Instinct took over. Cal didn't flinch away. He reacted like a wolf. A low, vibrating growl erupted from his chest, a sound so deep it rattled the window panes. It was a warning. Submission. Now, the entire construction crew stopped working. Silence fell over the hall. Rogan, the foreman, looked ready to dive through a window. Kimchi, however, was an idiot. Or brave. He barked right in Cal's face, a sharp yap, yap, yap that echoed off the high ceilings. Hey! Jin shouted, stepping between them. She smacked Cal on the shoulder with a rolled-up set of blueprints. Stop antagonizing my dog! Cal looked up, blinking. The amber glow in his eyes faded. He tried to bite me. He's a corgi, Cal. He's 12 inches tall. You are 6'4" and made of muscle. You don't growl at him. You give him a treat and apologize for existing in his space. Cal looked genuinely baffled. That's not how hierarchy works. In my house it is, Jin said, picking Kimchi up. The dog instantly stopped barking and settled into her arms with a smug expression, resting his chin on her shoulder. Kimchi is the alpha. You are the guest. Adjust your attitude. Cal slowly stood up, rubbing the spot where she'd hit him with the blueprints. He looked at the dog, then at Jin. A small, reluctant smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Understood, he murmured. He's the alpha. I'm the guest. Good. Jin turned to walk away. Now, if you'll excuse me, the alpha needs to pee on a bush. As she walked away, she heard Rogan whisper to Cal, Boss, did that dog just win? Shut up, Rogan, Cal replied. But there was no anger in his voice, only amusement. Chapter 12. The Glitch. By midday, Jin was ready to throw her expensive technology out the window. She was in the library, trying to map the room's dimensions for the new shelving units. She set up her laser distance measurer on a tripod, aimed it at the far wall, and pressed the button. Beep! The red dot appeared. Then Cal walked into the room. The red dot flickered, danced wildly across the ceiling, and vanished. The screen on the device scrambled, flashing error codes before going black. "Oh, come on," Jin groaned, smacking the device. "I just changed the batteries." Cal stopped in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "Problems?" "My equipment is haunted," Jin muttered, swapping the batteries for a fresh pair. She turned it back on. The laser appeared. She aimed it. Cal took 2 steps into the room. Zzzt! The laser died again. This time, the smell of ozone filled the air. Jin froze. She looked at the dead device in her hand. Then she looked at Cal. "Walk out," she commanded. Cal raised an eyebrow, but stepped back into the hallway. Jin turned the device on. It worked perfectly. The red dot was steady. "Walk in," she said. Cal stepped back in. The device sputtered and died. Jin lowered the tool and glared at him. "You act like a walking EMP. What are you made of? Uranium?" Cal chuckled, walking over to her. The air around him felt charged, static electricity prickling against her skin. "I've been told I have a strong presence." "It's not a presence, it's interference," Jin accused, poking him in the chest. His pectoral muscle was hard as a rock under her finger. "You are literally scrambling my electronics. How do you use a phone? Do you use smoke signals?" "I go through a lot of iPhones," Cal admitted, catching her hand before she could poke him again. His grip was warm, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "But I find that analog methods are more reliable." "Analog?" Jin's breath hitched. He was standing too close again. The library felt suddenly very small. "Like this," Cal whispered. He reached past her, taking the tape measure from her belt. He clipped the end to the edge of the bookshelf and walked backward, unspooling the yellow tape. He moved with a grace that shouldn't belong to a man of his size. 12 feet, 4 inches, he read, holding the tape taut. "No batteries required." Jin stared at him. The sunlight filtered through the dusty windows, illuminating the sharp angles of his face. He looked ancient and modern all at once, a creature of raw power pretending to be a billionaire in a library. "You're very proud of yourself, aren't you?" Jin asked, crossing her arms to hide the fact that her heart was racing. "I'm just helping the architect," Cal said, letting the tape snap back. "Since her fancy toys don't seem to like me." "Nothing seems to like you," Jin quipped. "My dog, my laser, my aunt's neighbors." "But you like me," Cal said softly. It wasn't a question. Jin opened her mouth to argue, but the denial died in her throat. "I tolerate you, Drivas. Don't push it." Chapter 13. Auntie May's Ambush. The workday ended late. Cal insisted on driving her home again, claiming that public transport is unreliable, even though Jin drove a Polestar and just hadn't brought it that day because of a flat tire. When they pulled up to the bungalow, the smell of spicy stew wafted all the way to the curb. "You're staying for dinner," Auntie May announced before the car engine even cut off. She was standing on the porch, waving a spatula. "I really shouldn't intrude," Cal began, though he was already unbuckling his seatbelt. "Nonsense! I made kimchi jjigae. Spicy. Good for stamina." Auntie May winked, a gesture that made Jin want to sink into the earth. Dinner was a chaotic affair. The dining table was small, meaning Cal's knees bumped against Jin's under the tablecloth every few minutes. Each time it happened, a jolt of electricity zipped up her leg. "So, Mr. Cal," Auntie May said, piling rice onto his plate, "what are your intentions with my niece?" Jin choked on her water. "Auntie!" Cal didn't blink. He swallowed a mouthful of spicy stew without even reaching for water. My intentions are to ensure the restoration of my home is completed to the highest standard. Auntie May narrowed her eyes. Boring answer. Do you have good health insurance? Excellent coverage, Cal replied solemnly. Under the table, a drama was unfolding. Kimchi had taken up a strategic position under Cal's chair. Every time Cal shifted his weight, Kimchi would lunge and nip at his ankles. Jin watched Cal's face. He would be in the middle of a sentence about architectural history, then suddenly wince, his jaw tightening. Are you okay? Jin whispered, leaning over. Fine, Cal grit out through a forced smile. Just a cramp. Jin peeked under the tablecloth. Kimchi was currently chewing on Cal's shoelaces with malicious intent. Cal was holding perfectly still, letting the dog destroy his $500 Italian leather shoes rather than kick him. Jin surfaced, suppressing a laugh. She kicked Kimchi gently away. Leave him alone, you gremlin! Cal let out a subtle exhale of relief. You have great patience, Cal, Auntie May observed, pouring him more tea. Most men would have run away by now. Jin is very bossy, and her dog is a demon. Cal looked at Jin. His eyes were soft, warm like melted caramel. I don't mind the bossiness. I think I need someone to tell me what to do. My life is usually people waiting for my orders. It's exhausting. The table went quiet. It was a rare moment of vulnerability. Well, Auntie May said, breaking the silence by slamming a bowl of fruit onto the table. Good, because she will tell you what to do for the rest of your life. Eat your melon! Chapter 14. The Temper. 2 days later, the mood at the manor shifted. They were working in the Great Hall, installing steel reinforcements for the new chandelier. The crew was tired. It was Friday afternoon, and focus was slipping. Jin was on the ground floor, reviewing schematics with Rogan. Above them, on the scaffolding, a worker named Silas was securing a heavy oak beam. Make sure those bolts are flush, Jin called out, not looking up. Got it, Luna. I mean, boss, Silas yelled back. But Silas was rushing. His grip slipped. The heavy wrench he was holding, a solid chunk of iron, tumbled from his hand. It fell 30 feet, straight toward Jin's head. She heard the clatter first. She looked up, seeing the dark shape plummeting. There wasn't time to move. She flinched, bracing for impact. She never felt it. A blur of motion, too fast for the human eye to track, slammed into her. 1 second she was standing alone. The next, she was pressed against the wall, shielded by a massive, hard body. Crash! The wrench smashed into the stone floor exactly where she had been standing, chipping the limestone. Jin gasped, her face buried in a chest that smelled of rain and fury. Cal was breathing hard, his arms locked around her like iron bands. He had moved from the balcony to the floor in a literal blink of an eye. He pulled back to check her, his hands frantic on her shoulders. Are you hurt? Did it touch you? I'm fine, Jin stammered, her heart pounding against his chest. You moved so fast. Cal didn't answer. He turned toward the scaffolding. The air in the room dropped 30 degrees instantly. The shadows seemed to lengthen, coiling around him. A low, guttural sound vibrated from his throat, a growl that triggered a primal fear in everyone present. Silas, Cal said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a terrifying weight. It sounded like rocks grinding together. Get down here. Silas, a burly wolf shifter, was shaking so hard the scaffolding rattled. He scrambled down. I'm sorry, boss, Silas whimpered, bowing his head low. It slipped, I swear. Cal marched toward him. His eyes were glowing amber, blazing with violence. The beast was close to the surface. Carelessness. You could have killed her. You nearly broke the... He raised a hand, his claws threatening to extend. The violence in the air was suffocating. Rogan and the other workers looked away, terrified to intervene. Thwack! Jin marched up and slapped Cal's arm, hard. Hey! She shouted. Stop it! Look at me! Cal froze. the growl cut off. He blinked, looking down at her. The amber fire in his eyes swirled with confusion. "He dropped a wrench, Cal. It was an accident. He didn't launch a nuclear missile." Jin poked him in the chest, right over his heart. "Stop acting like a monster. Use your words. You are a CEO, not a caveman." The silence in the hall was deafening. No one touched the alpha when he was in a temper. No one yelled at him. Cal stared at her. The tension drained out of his shoulders. The shadows retreated. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a second. When he opened them, they were human brown again. He looked at Silas. "Go home. Take the weekend. Don't come back until you can hold a wrench." Silas nodded frantically and bolted. Cal turned back to Jin. He looked shaken. You scared him," Jin said, her voice softer now. "You scared everyone." "Did I scare you?" Cal asked, his voice rough. Jin looked at the dent in the floor, then up at the man who had moved heaven and earth to save her. "No," she lied. "But next time, just catch the wrench. Less drama." Chapter 15. The Ley Lines. To diffuse the tension, Jin announced she needed to inspect the basement foundation. "Alone," she added, though Cal followed her anyway, lurking 3 steps behind like a repentant bodyguard. The basement of Drivas Manor was a labyrinth of stone arches and damp earth. It smelled of mildew and something else, something sharp and rotten like sulfur. "This is where the problem is," Jin said, shining her flashlight at the main support pillar. "The house feels sick because the foundation is sitting directly on a ley line intersection, and someone blocked the energy flow." She knelt by the pillar. The stone was weeping moisture. "Blocked it how?" Cal asked, crouching beside her. He was calm now, but his eyes were still scanning the shadows for threats. "The previous repairs," Jin said, running her hand over a wooden support beam that had been installed recently. It crumbled under her touch, turning to black powder. "Look at this. This wood is supposed to be pressure-treated oak. It's rotting from the inside out." She brought a handful of the black dust to her nose. She recoiled. "Ugh! Sulfur! And something metallic. Nitrate?" Cal's head snapped up. He grabbed her wrist, gentle this time, to stop her from touching it again. "Don't touch it." "It's corrosive," Jin observed, frowning. "This isn't standard pressure treatment. It looks like industrial waste. Why would anyone put this in a residential home?" Cal's face darkened, his nostrils flaring as he held his breath against the scent. "It makes the air heavy. It makes it hard to breathe." Jin stood up, wiping her hands on a rag. "This wasn't natural decay, Cal. Someone installed chemically treated wood right at the heart of your home. They didn't just do a bad job. They poisoned the house." "Who?" Cal growled, the temperature dropping again. "The previous contractor," Jin said, her mind racing. "You said he wanted to bulldoze the place. What was his name?" "Gavin." Cal spat the name like a curse. "Gavin Thorne." "Well," Jin said, clicking her pen, "Gavin didn't just steal your money. He rigged the place to reject you. The temper you feel? The aggression? It's the house trying to fight off an infection." She looked at Cal. "I can fix the house, but you need to find Gavin, because this level of sabotage, it's personal." Cal stood slowly. He looked at the rotting beam, then at Jin. A cold, calculated fury replaced the hot temper from earlier. "I'll find him," Cal promised. "But first, we fix the foundation." "We," Jin corrected. "I fix. You carry the heavy stuff, and try not to growl at the concrete. It has feelings." Cal looked at her, and for the first time that day, a genuine smile reached his eyes. "Yes, ma'am." Chapter 16. The Sleepless Nights. The discovery of the poisoned wood changed the atmosphere in the manor. It wasn't just a renovation anymore, it was a surgical extraction. Jin spent the next 3 days working late into the night, overseeing the removal of the silver-laced beams. She was exhausted, living off caffeine and sheer stubbornness. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday when she found him. Jin had come downstairs to the kitchen to refill her water bottle. The house was silent, settling into its stone bones, but the light in the solarium was on. She walked in quietly. Cal was standing by the glass wall, looking out into the darkness of the estate. He wasn't wearing a shirt, again, which was becoming a hazard for her blood pressure. His back was a landscape of muscle and old, faded scars. "You should be asleep," Jin said, leaning against the doorframe. Cal didn't jump. He didn't even turn around. "I could say the same to you, Jin. I'm an architect. Sleep is a concept we abandoned in grad school. What's your excuse?" Cal turned slowly. In the moonlight, he looked weary. The intense, predatory edge was softened by fatigue. "It's too loud," he murmured. Jin frowned. "Loud? It's dead silent. You could hear a pin drop." "For you, maybe." He tapped his ear. "I can hear the owl hunting in the west woods. I can hear the hum of the refrigerator compressor 3 rooms away. I can hear your heart beating. It's a lot." Jin stepped into the room. She had forgotten about the heightened senses. It sounded miserable, to be constantly bombarded by the world. "That sounds like a headache waiting to happen," she said sympathetically. "It is," Cal admitted. He walked over to one of the wicker chairs and sat down heavily, putting his head in his hands. "The house. Usually it dampens the noise. It shields us. But since the poisoning, the wards are down. I have no filter." Jin hesitated, then walked over. She stood in front of him. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. The effect was instantaneous. Cal let out a long, shuddering breath. His tension melted. He leaned into her touch, his forehead resting against her stomach. It was an incredibly intimate gesture, one that bypassed all social norms. "Quiet," he whispered. "When you touch me, the noise stops. It's just quiet." Jin stood frozen. Her hand was resting on his hot skin, feeling the heavy thrum of his pulse. She should pull away. This was unprofessional. This was dangerous. But he looked so desperate for peace. "I'm not a mute button, Drivas," she said, though her voice lacked its usual bite. She ran her thumb soothingly over his collarbone. "You are," he mumbled, his eyes closing. "You're the only silence I've found in 10 years. They stayed like that for a long time. The alpha of the Iron Ridge pack, terrifying and powerful, slumped against a human woman in a kitchen, using her presence to drown out the world. "If you drool on my shirt," Jin whispered, "I'm charging you a dry cleaning fee." Cal chuckled, a low vibration against her ribs. "Put it on my tab." Chapter 17. The Shedding. By Thursday, the immediate crisis of the Silverwood was resolved, but a new mystery had appeared. Jin was in the lounge, testing fabric swatches for the new sofas. She sat down on the existing velvet chaise and stood up looking like a yeti. "What on earth?" Jin gasped, brushing frantically at her black slacks. They were covered, absolutely coated, in thick, coarse gray fur. "Mrs. Gable!" Jin called out. The housekeeper, a sweet elderly woman who moved with surprising speed, poked her head in. "Yes, Miss Park?" "Do we have a dog I don't know about?" Jin asked, holding up a lint roller like a weapon. "Because Kimchi is a corgi. He sheds, but this is an entire ecosystem." Mrs. Gable went pale. She glanced nervously at the door. "Oh, no, miss, no dogs, just drafts. The wind blows things in." "The wind blows in 5 pounds of animal fur?" Jin raised an eyebrow. "Is it a wolf? A coyote? Because if Cal is hiding a husky in the attic, I need to know for allergy reasons." I have to go check the soup." Mrs. Gable fled. Jin narrowed her eyes. Something was going on. First the stray on the road, then the growling at Kimchi, now this. She went back to her makeshift office in the library. She needed a distraction. She pulled up the financial records she had recovered from the basement office, the ones Gavin Thorne had tried to hide. She started cross-referencing the invoices. Invoice number 402, timber supply, $50,000. Invoice number 403, security upgrade, $120,000. Jin frowned. She logged into the supplier's database, using a password she had guessed. Password 123. Criminals were rarely creative. The timber hadn't cost $50,000. It had cost $5,000. And the security upgrade? It was for a company called Thornshell Corp. Gotcha, Jin whispered. You didn't just buy bad wood, Gavin. You were laundering money. But as she scrolled, she found something else. An invoice for perimeter containment, silver nitrate solution. Jin stopped. Why would a human contractor buy silver nitrate? Unless he knew exactly what he was dealing with. Unless he knew about the wolves. She looked at the gray fur sticking to her sleeve. She thought about Cal's heat, his speed, the way he growled. The pieces were floating in her brain, waiting to click. She just needed one more push. She picked up her phone and opened the app for the new security system she had just installed. Let's see what bumps in the night, she muttered. Chapter 18. The Security System. Jin had installed a state-of-the-art smart home system. It had thermal imaging, motion sensors, and AI recognition software that could distinguish between a delivery driver, a deer, and a potential burglar. She was at Auntie May's house that evening, helping Kimchi with his sit commands. He refused to sit unless offered cheddar cheese, when her phone buzzed. Notification. Movement detected. Library. Jin frowned. It was 11 p.m. The construction crew was gone. Mrs. Gable slept in the guest cottage. She opened the app. The live feed from the library camera popped up. It was dark, but the thermal imaging showed a heat signature. A massive one. It was pacing back and forth. The heat signature was glowing bright red and white, way hotter than a normal human. Is that Cal? She wondered. Why is he glowing like a supernova? Then, on the screen, the shape dropped to all fours. Jin brought the phone closer to her face. What are you doing, Drivas? Yoga? The figure shifted. Bones seemed to rearrange. The humanoid shape blurred, expanded, and elongated. Within seconds, the man was gone. In his place stood a massive four-legged beast. The AI software tagged the image. Object identified, Canis lupus, wolf. Threat level, high. Jin stared at the screen. The wolf on the screen shook itself, sending a cloud of imaginary fur into the air, and then curled up on the rug in front of the fire. Jin dropped her piece of cheddar cheese. Kimchi snatched it immediately. It's not a husky, Jin whispered to the dog. It's him. Kimchi crunched the cheese loudly, looking at her with an expression that clearly said, I told you so, you oblivious woman. You knew, Jin accused the dog. That day at the vet, the growling, you knew he wasn't a dog. Kimchi licked his chops and yawned. Jin grabbed her car keys. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, not with fear, but with a sudden, furious clarity. He owes me so much money for detailing, she hissed, grabbing her coat, and for the emotional distress of thinking I was crazy. She marched out to the Polestar. She wasn't running away. She was driving straight into the wolf's den. Chapter 19. The Confrontation. The drive to the manor usually took 40 minutes. Jin made it in 25. She spent the entire time rehearsing her speech. She was going to be calm, rational. She was going to present the evidence and demand an explanation. She arrived at the gates, punched in the code, and roared up the driveway. She parked the car crookedly, a sign of her agitation, and stormed up the steps. The front door unlocked automatically as she approached. Show-off house, she muttered. She marched straight to the library. The double doors were closed. She didn't knock. She threw them open. All right, Cujo, jig is up. The scene inside froze. Cal was there. He wasn't a wolf at this exact second, but he was clearly mid-transition or fighting it. He was shirtless. His skin flushed a deep, alarming red. He was gripping the edge of the mahogany desk so hard the wood was splintering under his fingers. He looked up, his eyes glowing a bright, incandescent amber. His canines were extended, sharp and white over his bottom lip. "Jinn," he growled. It wasn't a human voice. It was a sound dragged up from a cavern. "Get out." "No," Jinn said, slamming the door behind her and locking it. She held up her phone. "My security system just tagged you as a large predator. Also, I found shedding on my velvet sofa that matches the stray dog I rescued 2 weeks ago." Cal flinched. He took a step back, putting the desk between them. "I am dangerous right now. The silver, the stress, I can't hold the shift back." "I don't care about the shift," Jinn said, walking forward. She stopped 5 feet away from him. She could feel the heat radiating off him in waves. "I care that you lied to me. I took you to a vet, Cal. A vet! I tried to feed you dog treats." Cal let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "I remember. You called me a mangy flea bag." "You were a mangy flea bag. You were muddy." Jinn threw her hands up. "So what is it? Werewolf? Shifter? Lichen?" "Werewolf," Cal forced out, his body trembling with the effort to stay human. "I am the alpha of the Iron Ridge Pack, and right now, my wolf wants to claim you, so you need to run." Jinn looked at him. She looked at the claws digging into the desk. She looked at the terror in his eyes. Not terror for himself, but terror that he would hurt her. She didn't run. "Claim me?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. "Like an Amazon package? I don't think so." She walked around the desk. "Jinn, stop!" Cal roared, backing into the bookshelf. Books tumbled down. "I can't control it!" "Yes, you can," Jinn said calmly. She reached out and grabbed his face with both hands. His skin was burning. He snarled, his lips pulling back to reveal lethal teeth inches from her nose. "Look at me," she commanded, using her bad dog voice. "You are Callum Drivas. You pay my invoices. You like my aunt's cooking. You are not going to eat me." Cal froze. He stared into her eyes, his chest heaving like a bellows. The amber fire in his eyes flickered, warring with the human brown. "How?" he gasped. "How are you not afraid?" "I'm an architect," Jinn whispered, stroking his cheek with her thumb. "I work with structural instability every day. You're just another project that needs a little reinforcement." Chapter 20. The Truth. The tension in the room broke. Cal slumped forward, his forehead resting on Jinn's shoulder, his weight heavy. The claws retracted, the growl died in his throat. "You are insane," he mumbled into her shirt. "Says the man who turns into a rug when he's stressed," Jinn retorted, though she wrapped her arms around his massive torso to hold him up. They moved to the leather sofa. Cal drank a bottle of water in 3 seconds flat, his hands finally steady. "So," Jinn said, sitting cross-legged opposite him, "let's review. You're a werewolf. The construction crew are wolves. Rogan is a wolf. That's why they eat raw steaks." "Yes," Cal said, looking at the floor. He looked like a schoolboy called to the principal's office. "And the temper? The house rejecting you?" "The house sits on a ley line that stabilizes our pack," Cal explained. "When Gavin poisoned it with silver, it broke the connection. It made us all aggressive. Feral. That night you found me, I had gone to investigate the perimeter. I triggered a ward he had rigged." "The ward hurt you?" "It crushed my ribs, burned me with magic. I crawled to the road hoping for help. I didn't expect—" He looked up at her, a soft smile touching his lips. "A woman in a pole star lecturing me about hygiene." Jinn felt a blush creeping up her neck. "I thought you were a dog. I was trying to be helpful." "You were," Cal said. "You saved me. If the vet had touched me with a silver needle, or if animal control had taken me, I would be dead. You saved the alpha. You saved the pack." "Well," Jinn brushed imaginary lint off her knee, "you're welcome. But that brings me to my next point. She pulled out the folder she had brought with her. Gavin knew, she said, tapping the paper. He bought silver nitrate. He knew what you were. This wasn't just embezzlement, Cal. It was a hate crime. He was trying to wipe you out. Cal's expression hardened. The predator was back, but this time it was cold and controlled. He tried to kill my family. Exactly, which is why we are going to nail him. Jin opened the folder. I tracked his shell company. He's dumb, Cal. He's using the same routing number for his consulting fees as he uses for his offshore gambling accounts. Cal looked at the documents, then at Jin. You investigated a dangerous criminal who hunts werewolves because you were annoyed about the invoices? I hate bad accounting, Jin shrugged, and nobody messes with my job site. Cal laughed. It was a full, rich sound that filled the room. He reached out and took her hand, interlacing their fingers. The static shock, that blue spark, snapped between them again. You are incredible, he said, staring at her like she was the eighth wonder of the world. My Luna. Don't call me that, Jin warned, though she didn't pull her hand away. I'm your architect. Now, put a shirt on. We have a trap to set. Chapter 21. The Morning After. Jin woke up with a stiff neck and a mouth that tasted like old coffee. For a split second, she thought she was back in her cramped office at the firm. Then she registered the smell. Leather, old books, and that distinct earthy scent of rain and pine. She sat up. She was on the leather sofa in the Drivas library. Someone had draped a heavy cashmere blanket over her. Oh no, she whispered, the memories of last night crashing down on her like a pile of bricks. The thermal camera, the growling, the werewolf. Oh yes. A deep voice rumbled from the corner. Jin jumped, clutching the cashmere to her chest. Cal was sitting in the high-backed armchair, watching her. He looked domestic. He was wearing a fresh white t-shirt and reading a newspaper, a mug of coffee balanced on his knee. He looked unfairly attractive for a man who had nearly turned into a canine rug 12 hours ago. Good morning, Cal said, a hint of amusement dancing in his eyes. Coffee? I don't want coffee. I want a sanity check, Jin muttered, swinging her legs off the couch. So, I didn't dream it? You're actually fuzzy. Fuzzy is not the preferred nomenclature, but yes. He stood up and poured her a cup from a silver carafe. How are you processing the information? Panic? Denial? The urge to run screaming? Jin took the coffee. She took a sip. It was perfect. Hazelnut, 2 sugars. I'm processing it with data. I spent 2 hours on my phone last night before I passed out. Did you know there are forums about you guys? Apparently, if I feed you chocolate, you die. That is a myth, Cal said, leaning against the desk. Though I prefer dark chocolate. Milk chocolate is for children. And the silver? Deadly, as you found out. His face darkened slightly at the mention of the poisoning. Jin stood up, smoothing her wrinkled clothes. Okay, so my client is a werewolf. My contractor was a werewolf hunter, and my dog is a traitor who knew the whole time. Kimchi is a wise creature, Cal agreed. He's a cheese-addicted snitch. Jin walked to the window. Outside, the construction crew was arriving. She watched them differently now. She saw the way they moved, too fluid, too strong. Rogan was lifting a steel beam by himself that should have required a crane. They're all wolves? Jin asked. Most of them. It's hard for us to work regular jobs. We break things. We eat too much. We react poorly to rude managers. Jin turned to him, horrified. I yelled at Rogan yesterday. I told him he had the spatial awareness of a stunned mullet. Could he have eaten me? He could have, Cal nodded solemnly. But he wouldn't. You're protected. By labor laws? Cal took a step closer, entering her personal space. The air pressure dropped. By me. You are under my protection, Jin. No one in this pack would dare scratch you. Good to know, Jin said, trying to ignore the flutter in her chest. Because we have a lot of work to do. And if Rogan eats the drywall, I'm taking it out of his paycheck. Chapter 22. The Ultimatum. The peace didn't last long. By noon, 3 black sedans rolled up the driveway. "The board of directors?" Jin asked, looking out the window of the great hall. "Worse," Cal said, his jaw tightening. "The elders." 3 men stepped out. They were old, dressed in expensive but dated suits, and they radiated an aura of grumpy authority. They walked into the manor like they owned it, sniffing the air with disdain. "Alpha," the lead elder, a man named Magnus with eyebrows like bushy caterpillars, greeted Cal. Then his eyes snapped to Jin. He frowned. "Why is the human still here? We smelled her scent all over the library." "Miss Park is the architect," Cal said, his voice dropping to that dangerous low register. "She is fixing the house." "She knows," Magnus accused, pointing a gnarled finger at Jin. "I can smell the knowledge on her. The fear is gone. She knows what we are." "I do." Jin stepped forward, crossing her arms. "And for the record, you smell like mothballs in judgment." Magnus looked like he had been slapped. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. And if you're here to fire me, save your breath. I have a contract. Triple rate. Exclusivity clause. And frankly, this house is a disaster that only I can fix." "A human cannot fix the ancestral seat," another elder barked. "It is sacred ground. She must be removed. We will wipe her memory." "You touch her mind," Cal growled, stepping in front of Jin, claws extending. "And I will remove your head." The room froze. The violence in Cal's voice was absolute. "Cal, down boy," Jin said, placing a hand on his back. The contact instantly soothed him. His shoulders dropped. She stepped around him to face the elders. "Listen to me, you geriatric furballs," she said sharply. "Your sacred seat is poisoned. Someone laced your foundation with silver. While you were sitting around sniffing each other's tails, I found the rot. I found the invoices. I know who did it." The elders went silent. Magnus narrowed his eyes. "Silver?" "Yes, silver nitrate. Installed by Gavin Thorne. I have the proof." Jin pulled out her tablet and shoved it into Magnus's hands. "Read it. Or eat it. I don't care. But I'm the only one who knows how to remove those beams without collapsing the entire north wing on top of us. So, you can either let me work, or you can explain to the pack why their home is killing them." Magnus looked at the tablet, then at Cal, and finally at Jin. He huffed, a sound like a deflating tire. "She has spirit," Magnus muttered. "She has a PhD in structural engineering and a very low tolerance for nonsense," Jin corrected. "Now get out of my light. I have work to do." Chapter 23. The Proving, Part 1. The elders didn't leave. Instead, they sat in the corner of the construction site like a panel of judges on a reality TV show, watching Jin's every move. "They're waiting for you to fail," Cal whispered to her as they reviewed the blueprints for the basement. "Good," Jin said, tying her hair back. "I work better out of spite." The task was delicate. They had to remove the main support beam in the cellar, the one Gavin had poisoned, and replace it with a steel column. But the house was resting its entire weight on that rotten wood. If they made a mistake, the manor would implode. "We need to shore it up," Jin instructed Rogan. "Hydraulic jacks here, here, and here." "We can just hold it," Rogan suggested, flexing his massive arms. "The boys and I, we can hold the ceiling while you swap the beam." "Absolutely not," Jin said. "I don't care if you're Hulk Hogan. Flesh and bone is not a structural support. We use the jacks." "The human doubts our strength," Magnus commented loudly from the corner. Jin ignored him. She set up the jacks herself, measuring the pressure to the millimeter. "Cal, I need you on the winch. When I say pull, you pull. Gently, like you're holding a baby bird." "I can do gentle," Cal said, gripping the chain. "Ready?" Jin called out. "Heave!" The crew worked. The jacks hissed, taking the weight. The rotten beam groaned. It's stuck, Rogan yelled. The rot has fused it to the stone. Don't yank it, Jin screamed. But one of the younger wolves, trying to impress the elders, grabbed the beam and pulled with all his supernatural strength. Crack! The beam didn't just come loose, it shattered. The ceiling above them lurched downward. Dust rained down. The hydraulic jacks whined, struggling under the sudden shift in weight. Stabilize it! Jin yelled, diving forward not away from the danger, but toward the failing jack. She grabbed the release valve, twisting it to redistribute the pressure. Jin, move! Cal roared. Shut up, I've got it! Jin wrestled with the machinery. The stone archway above her groaned, a 50-ton guillotine waiting to drop. With a final grunt of effort, she locked the jack in place. The ceiling stopped moving. The dust settled. Jin stood up, covered in gray powder, coughing. She pointed a shaking finger at the young wolf who had pulled the beam. You! She shouted. Get off my sight! Go sit in the car! She turned to the elders. Was that enough strength for you, or do you want me to bench press a truck next? Magnus stroked his beard, his eyes wide. He looked at the stable ceiling, then at the tiny human woman who had just outthought a collapsing building. Competent, Magnus grudgingly admitted. Very competent. Chapter 24. The Collapse. Just when they thought the danger was over, the ground betrayed them. The removal of the poison beam had upset the ley line energy. The earth beneath the basement floor, saturated with magical corruption for years, suddenly liquefied. Sinkhole! Rogan shouted. The floor in the center of the room gave way. A gaping maw opened up, swallowing equipment and debris. Help! It was Silas, the clumsy wolf from before. He had slid into the hole. He was hanging onto a jagged piece of rebar, dangling over a dark, muddy drop. Silas! Cal moved to jump in, but Jin grabbed his belt. Don't! She screamed. The ground is unstable. If you jump, the vibration will collapse the rest of the floor and bury him. Cal froze, his eyes wild. He's slipping. I know! Jin looked around frantically. She saw the winch cable hanging from the ceiling. We need leverage, not weight. Rogan, anchor that cable to the main pillar. Cal, give me the hook. Jin grabbed the heavy steel hook. She tied it around her waist. Lower me, she commanded. Are you insane? Cal grabbed her shoulders. I am not lowering you into a pit. I'm 80 pounds lighter than you, Jin snapped. I won't trigger the collapse. Lower me down, I'll hook him up, and you pull us both out. Do it, Alpha. That's an order. Cal looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes. He saw the absolute certainty. He nodded, terrified but trusting. Lowering, he rasped. Jin descended into the dark hole. The smell of sulfur was choking. Silas was whimpering below her, his grip slipping on the muddy rebar. I got you, Silas, Jin said, her voice surprisingly steady. Stop wiggling! You're shaking the dirt! She reached him. She unclipped the hook from her waist and snapped it onto Silas's heavy leather utility belt. Okay, pull him up, Jin yelled. What about you? Silas cried as the cable went taut. I'm climbing out. Go! Cal hauled Silas up in one smooth motion. As soon as the wolf was clear, the edge of the sinkhole crumbled further. The rebar Jin was standing on groaned. Jin! Cal's voice echoed from above. She looked up. He was leaning over the edge, his hand outstretched. The ground was crumbling beneath his chest. Grab my hand! Jin jumped. She caught his wrist. He caught hers. The connection was electric, that static shock zapping them both, but stronger this time. It felt like a lifeline. He hauled her up effortlessly, pulling her out of the darkness and straight into his chest. He dragged them both backward, away from the hole, until they hit the far wall. He didn't let go. He buried his face in her dusty hair, shaking uncontrollably. Don't you ever, he growled, his voice breaking, do that again. Chapter 25. The Surrender. The basement was silent. The elders, the crew, everyone was staring at the couple slumped against the wall. Jin was panting, her heart racing. She looked up at Cal. He looked wrecked. The invincible alpha was pale, his eyes wide with lingering terror, not for himself, but for her. "I had to," she whispered. "It was the only way." Cal pulled back to look at her face. He ran his thumb over a smudge of dirt on her cheek. "You saved him. You saved the house. You saved me." He slowly shifted his position. In front of his entire pack, in front of the judging elders, Callum Drivas, the Alpha King, sank to his knees. He bowed his head, pressing his forehead against Jin's hands. A gasp went through the room. Alphas did not kneel. Not ever. "Cal, what are you doing?" Jin hissed. "Get up. You're getting dirt on your knees." "No," he said, his voice ringing clear in the silence. "I am strong for them, Jin. I have to be the monster in the dark to keep them safe. But for you—" He looked up, his amber eyes shining with raw, unfiltered devotion. "For you, I am weak. You are the foundation. You are the anchor. I surrender." It wasn't a political statement. It was a mating vow. Jin felt tears prick her eyes. She hated crying. It was inefficient. But seeing this giant, terrifying man look at her like she was the only star in the sky broke down her last defensive wall. "You're an idiot," she choked out, leaning down to kiss his forehead. "A dramatic, overgrown idiot." "You're idiot," he murmured. Magnus, the lead elder, cleared his throat loudly. "Well," the old wolf grumbled, adjusting his tie, "it seems the house has chosen, and the alpha has chosen." He looked at Jin with a newfound respect. "Try not to get killed, architect. The pack needs a Luna with a brain." As the elders filed out, defeated by competence and romance, Jin looked down at Cal. "Does this mean I get a raise?" she asked. Cal laughed, wrapping his arms around her waist and burying his face in her stomach. "You get everything, Jin. You get everything." Chapter 26. The Shift. The atmosphere at Drivas Manor had shifted. Before the sinkhole incident, the construction crew had treated Jin like a nuisance, a tiny human woman with a clipboard and too many opinions. Now, they treated her like an unexploded ordnance. When Jin walked into the Great Hall the morning after the proving, conversation died instantly. 20 massive, muscle-bound werewolves stopped what they were doing. They pressed their backs against the walls to give her a wide berth, eyes lowered respectfully. "Good morning," Jin said, her voice echoing in the silence. "Good morning, Luna," Rogan squeaked. The man was 6'7" and had biceps the size of watermelons, yet he looked ready to faint because she had made eye contact. "Don't call me that," Jin sighed, adjusting her hard hat. "And Rogan, why are you hiding behind a fern? You don't fit." "Respect, ma'am. Utmost respect." Jin rubbed her temples. "This is going to be annoying. I can feel it." She walked toward the makeshift coffee station. Silas, the wolf she had pulled out of the sinkhole, was guarding the coffee pot like it was the Holy Grail. When he saw her coming, he frantically poured a cup, added exactly 2 sugars, how did he know, and offered it to her with trembling hands. "For you, Miss Park, freshly brewed, beans ground by hand." "Thanks, Silas," Jin said, taking the cup. "You know, you don't have to bow every time I enter a room. It's bad for your lumbar support." "You jumped into the earth for me," Silas whispered, his eyes shining with hero worship. "You are the bravest human I have ever smelled." "I smell like dust and sulfur," Jin muttered, taking a sip. "Where's Cal?" "The Alpha is in the West Wing," Silas said. "He is negotiating." Jin found Cal in the drawing room. He wasn't negotiating with suppliers, he was negotiating with a tailor. Or rather, the tailor was trying to measure Cal's inseam while Cal vibrated with impatience. "Jin," Cal breathed out when he saw her. The relief on his face was comical. "Save me. This man is trying to put me in velvet." "It's for the winter gala, sir," the tailor insisted. "Velvet is very in this season." I am not wearing velvet, Cal growled. I will look like a sofa. Jin leaned against the doorframe, sipping her coffee. Actually, with your coloring, midnight blue velvet would work, but you'd overheat in 5 minutes and burst into flames. Cal's eyes locked onto hers. The amber glow was faint but present. Get him out of here, please. I need to inspect the foundation repairs with you. Dismissed, Jin told the tailor. The man fled instantly. Cal walked over to her. He didn't stop until he was inches away. He reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her jawline. They're terrified of you, Cal murmured, a smirk playing on his lips. Rogan asked me if he needed permission to breathe in your presence. It's ridiculous, Jin complained, though she leaned into his touch. I liked it better when they thought I was just a bossy architect. Now I'm a religious figure. You are a religious figure to them, Cal said seriously. You went into the dark for one of us. You are the pack mother now, Jin, whether you want the title or not. I don't have time to be a mother. I have a deadline. Then be a boss, Cal whispered, leaning down to brush his lips against her forehead. Just be my boss. Chapter 27. The Date. We are going on a date, Cal announced 2 days later. I'm busy, Jin replied, not looking up from her laptop. Gavin Thorne is still out there, and I'm tracking his shell company's Cayman Island transactions. The FBI can handle the Cayman Islands for one night. I want to take you to dinner. A normal, human dinner. No wolves, no sinkholes, no protein shakes. Jin looked up. Cal was wearing a suit that cost more than her college education. He looked devastating. Fine, Jin relented, but if you growl at the waiter, I'm leaving. They went to Le Bernardin, the fanciest French restaurant in the city. The maitre d' took one look at Cal, who filled the doorway like a bouncer, and nervously led them to a private booth. The trouble started immediately. The booth was designed for normal humans. Cal squeezed in, his knees hitting the table, his shoulders practically knocking over the salt shaker. He looked like a bear trying to have a tea party. Then came the waiter. He was a thin man with a sneer that suggested he smelled something bad. He took Cal's order with obsequious politeness, but when he turned to Jin, his demeanor shifted. And for the lady? The waiter glanced at Jin's work-worn hands. She had been sanding drywall earlier, and her simple dress. Perhaps the chicken? It is the most economical option. The temperature at the table dropped. The candle in the center flickered. Cal stopped buttering his bread. A low, vibrating rumble started in his chest. His silverware rattled against the china. Jin kicked him under the table. Hard. Ouch! Cal hissed, the amber fading from his eyes. Jin smiled sweetly at the waiter. Actually, Jean-Pierre, I'll have the Wagyu beef tasting menu, with the truffle supplement, and bring a bottle of the 82 Bordeaux. My boyfriend is paying, and he has very deep pockets, unlike your manners. The waiter turned bright red. Of course, madam. He scurried away. Cal let out a breath, the tension leaving his shoulders. I was going to rip his throat out. I know, that's why I kicked you. You can't eat the staff, Cal. It's bad for digestion. He insulted you. He's a snob. I'm a restoration architect who drives a Polestar and owns a house. I don't need you to defend my honor against a man who relies on tips. Cal reached across the table and took her hand. The static shock was immediate, a sharp zap that made the couple at the next table look over. You are terrifying, Cal said admiringly, and beautiful, and I have no idea how to date you. You're doing fine, Jin said, squeezing his hand. Just maybe don't crush the wine glass. Cal looked down. The stem of his crystal goblet had snapped in his grip. Right. Gentle. I can do gentle. Prove it, Jin challenged softly. Cal's eyes darkened. Get me home, Jin, and I'll prove exactly how gentle and how not gentle I can be. Chapter 28. The Night of Passion. By the time they drove back to the manor, the weather had turned. A freak blizzard, common in Briarcliff Bluffs, had swept in, burying the road in white. "We're snowed in," Cal said, parking the SUV. The gates were frozen shut. The world outside was a howling white void. Inside, the manor was warm. The new heating system Jin had designed was working perfectly. The house felt alive, its stone heart beating in time with theirs. Cal locked the front door. The sound of the heavy bolt sliding home echoed in the foyer. He turned to her. There was no playfulness in his face now. The air around him was charged, heavy with the scent of ozone and desire. "Jin," he said. It was a question and a command. Jin walked up to him. She placed her hands on his chest. His heart was hammering against her palms, a frantic, powerful rhythm. She could feel the heat radiating through his dress shirt, scorching her skin. "Show me," she whispered. Cal scooped her up. It wasn't like in the movies where the guy struggles. He lifted her as if she were made of smoke. He carried her up the grand staircase, his stride purposeful. He kicked open the door to the master suite. He set her down on the edge of the massive bed, then knelt between her legs. He didn't touch her yet. He just looked. His pupils were blown wide, swallowing the iris. "You are my anchor," he rasped, his voice rough with emotion. "Every noise, every smell, every pain, it all stops when I'm with you. You own me, Jin, body and wolf." Jin reached out and unbuttoned his shirt. Her hands were shaking. "Then stop talking, Alpha, and claim your territory." The kiss was explosive. It wasn't soft, it was hunger. It was 10 years of loneliness crashing into the only thing that could fix it. Cal's mouth was hot, demanding. His hands were everywhere, in her hair, on her waist, pulling her flush against his hardness. When skin finally touched skin, the static shock was blinding. It wasn't painful anymore, it was euphoric. A blue arc of light danced over their bodies as the bond solidified. "Mine," Cal growled against her neck, his teeth grazing the sensitive skin. "Mine." "Yours," Jin gasped, digging her nails into his shoulders. The night was a blur of heat and sensation. Cal was massive, overwhelming, a force of nature. But true to his word, he was careful. He treated her like precious glass, even as he consumed her. He used his strength to hold himself back, to ensure she was with him every step of the way. For the first time in her life, Jin let go of the control. She didn't have to be the boss. She didn't have to fix anything. She just had to feel. Outside, the storm raged, burying the world in ice. Inside, the fire consumed them both. Chapter 29. The Luna. Jin woke up to the smell of bacon. She stretched, her body aching in a very pleasant way. The other side of the bed was empty, but the sheets were still warm. She sat up, spotting a shirt draped over the chair. It was one of Cal's black t-shirts. She put it on. It came down to her knees. "Perfect," she yawned. "I look like a gothic tent." She shuffled downstairs, following the scent of food. She walked into the massive industrial kitchen, expecting to find Mrs. Gable. Instead, she found the pack. 10 of the biggest wolves, including Rogan and Silas, were crowded around the kitchen island. They were eating piles of scrambled eggs. When Jin walked in, the room went dead silent. Every single wolf stopped chewing. They stood up in unison, and then they tilted their heads to the side, baring their necks. It was a sign of absolute submission. They were acknowledging her status. She was wearing the alpha's scent, and his shirt. She was the Luna. Jin stood there, barefoot, hair a mess, wearing a giant t-shirt. "Oh, for God's sake," she groaned. "Stop it! You look like synchronized swimmers." Rogan kept his head tilted, staring at the floor. "We cannot look you in the eye, Luna. The alpha's claim mark is very potent." Jin touched her neck. There was a faint red mark where Cal's stubble and teeth had been. She flushed crimson. "Eyes up, everyone!" she barked. "I am not a deity. I am caffeine deprived. Who made the coffee?" Cal walked in from the pantry, holding a tray of fresh biscuits. He was shirtless, wearing low-slung sweatpants. He looked smug. Incredibly, annoyingly smug. "I made the coffee," Cal said, setting the tray down. He walked over to Jin, wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, and rested his chin on her head. "Good morning, wife." "Not wife," Jin corrected, elbowing him. "Girlfriend. Maybe. We haven't discussed labels." "The wolf has labeled you," Rogan muttered. "We can smell it from the driveway." "Rogan," Cal warned, a low rumble in his chest. "Watch your tone." "Sorry, Alpha. Just happy for you." Jin extricated herself from Cal's grip and grabbed a mug. "Okay, listen up. Just because I'm sleeping with the boss doesn't mean the renovation schedule changes. Rogan, the drywall in the east wing needs to be finished by Tuesday. Silas, stop eating all the bacon. Move out!" The wolves scrambled to obey. "Yes, Luna! On it, Luna!" They fled the kitchen. Jin slumped against the counter. "I'm never going to get them to call me Jin again, am I?" "No," Cal said, pouring himself a cup. "You are their queen now. You might as well get used to the bowing." "I hate bowing," Jin grumbled, biting into a biscuit. "But these biscuits are good. Did you make them?" "Mrs. Gable made them," Cal admitted. "I just carried the tray. I'm good at heavy lifting." Chapter 30. The Auntie Meeting. A week later, the snow had melted, and it was time for the final hurdle, the Auntie dinner. Jin had warned Cal. "Auntie May loves you, but Kimchi is still holding a grudge, and Auntie is going to ask about grandchildren. Do not answer. Fake a seizure if you have to." Cal looked nervous. He was wearing a cashmere sweater that made him look soft and touchable, which was a dangerous disguise for a lethal predator. They arrived at the bungalow. Auntie May opened the door and screamed with delight. "Mr. Cal, you are back! And you look fed!" She pinched his bicep. "Good, Jin is feeding you." "I try, Auntie," Cal smiled charmingly. Inside, Kimchi was waiting on his throne, the sofa. He saw Cal. He narrowed his eyes. Cal walked over. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a peace offering. A high-grade, organic dried liver treat. He held it out. "Truce?" Kimchi sniffed the treat. He looked at Cal. He looked at the treat. He gently took the treat, ate it in one bite, and then immediately turned his back on Cal to show him his fluffy butt. "It's progress," Jin said. "He didn't bite you." Dinner was loud and chaotic. But as the evening wound down, the mood shifted. Jin cleared the table and brought out her laptop. "Okay, fun's over. We need to talk about Gavin." Auntie May poured tea. "The bad man who broke the house?" "The man who tried to kill Cal," Jin corrected. "I've tracked his movements. He's desperate. His gambling debts are due next week. He needs cash, fast." "And he thinks the manor is full of valuable artifacts," Cal added, his face hardening. "He thinks he can come back and scavenge." "So we're going to give him something to scavenge," Jin said, turning the laptop screen around. "I've planted a story in the Briarcliff Gazette, a puff piece about the renovation. It mentions that during the excavation, we found the lost Drivas diamond hidden in the library walls." "There is no diamond," Auntie May pointed out. "Gavin doesn't know that," Jin grinned, a sharp, predatory smile that matched Cal's. "He knows the legends. He'll come for it. And when he breaks in—" "We will be waiting," Cal finished. "The wards are fixed. The house is strong. And I am very, very angry." "It's a trap," Jin confirmed. "We catch him, we hand him to the police, and the terrifying loan sharks he owes money to, and the threat is gone forever." Auntie May sipped her tea. "I like it. Very dramatic. Can I hit him with a broom?" "No, Auntie," Jin and Cal said in unison. "Fine," she pouted. "But make sure you get it on video." Chapter 31. The Final Fix. The fake news article in the Briarcliff Gazette had gone viral, at least in the very specific circles that Gavin Thorne frequented. The headline screamed, Architect discovers lost Drivas diamond during manor restoration, valued at $5 million. In reality, the lost Drivas diamond was a faceted glass paperweight Jin had bought at a discount home goods store for $12.99. She had placed it on a velvet cushion inside a display case in the library, illuminated by a single dramatic spotlight. "It looks ridiculous," Cal said, staring at the paperweight. "It looks expensive," Jin corrected, adjusting the spotlight. To a desperate man, glitter looks like gold. And Gavin is desperate. "My tracker shows he liquidated his last offshore account yesterday. He owes the Viper Syndicate, lovely name by the way, $2 million by Friday." "So he comes tonight," Cal said. He was leaning against a bookshelf, arms crossed. The renovation was finished. The manor smelled of fresh paint, beeswax, and lemon oil. The rot was gone. The temper was gone. The house was peaceful, humming with a contented energy that felt like a cat purring. But the air around Cal was still sharp. He was the only thing in the room that felt dangerous. "He comes tonight," Jin confirmed. "Are the boys in position?" "Rogan is in the east garden disguised as a bush. Silas is on the roof, and the rest of the pack is in the basement playing poker, waiting for my signal." Jin laughed. "Rogan is going to get a cramp. Did he stretch?" "Jin," Cal said, stepping forward. He took her hands. The static shock was a familiar comfort now, a low hum that settled her nerves. "This man, he tried to kill me. He poisoned my home. If he comes in here, I cannot promise I will be polite." "I don't want you to be polite," Jin said, looking up into his amber-flecked eyes. "I want you to be terrifying, but I don't want you to be a murderer. We are better than him, Cal. We build things. He destroys them." Cal brought her knuckles to his lips. "You build things. I just carry the bricks." "You carry the heart of this house," she whispered. Suddenly, Jin's phone buzzed, a harsh, double vibration. She pulled it out. The smart home app was flashing red. "Alert! Perimeter breach south gate. Alert! Motion detected. Garden." Jin looked at Cal. The playfulness vanished from his face instantly. His jaw set, looking sharp enough to cut glass. His pupils expanded, swallowing the brown iris until his eyes were pure, glowing predator. "He's here," Cal growled, the sound dropping the room temperature by 10 degrees. "Showtime," Jin said. She tapped a button on her phone, cutting the main lights to the house. The manor plunged into darkness, save for the single, taunting spotlight on the fake diamond. Chapter 32. The Trap for the Rat. Gavin Thorne thought he was a genius. He had the blueprints, old ones. He had the access codes, expired ones. And he had a bag full of silver dust just in case the dogs were home. He crept through the south garden, avoiding the gravel path. He was wearing all black, looking like a caricature of a cat burglar. He didn't notice the bush near the fountain twitch as he passed it. He reached the library window. He used a glass cutter, so cliché, and popped the latch. He slid inside, his boots hitting the expensive hardwood floor with a soft thud. The room was pitch black, except for the glowing beacon in the center. "Jackpot," Gavin whispered, his greed overriding his survival instincts. He crept toward the display case. The diamond sparkled under the light. He reached into his bag and pulled out a canvas sack. He was sweating. He needed this money. If he didn't pay the Vipers, they were going to remove his kneecaps with a rusty spoon. He reached for the glass case. Click! The library doors slammed shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Gavin spun around, dropping his bag. "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a sound came from the shadows. A low, vibrating rumble. It sounded like a massive engine idling, or tectonic plates grinding together. It was a sound that triggered a primitive, lizard-brain fear in Gavin's spine. "I have silver!" Gavin shouted, his voice cracking. He fumbled for his bag. "I know what you are! Stay back!" From the darkest corner of the room, two eyes opened. They were glowing, molten gold. They were too high up to belong to a dog. They belonged to a monster. "You brought silver," a voice said. It wasn't human. It was deep, distorted, and layered with the growl of a beast. "Into my house." Again, Cal stepped into the sliver of light from the display case. He hadn't shifted fully, but he wasn't human either. His claws were extended, 3 inches of razor-sharp bone. His teeth were bared. The air around him shimmered with heat. Gavin screamed. He scrambled back, knocking over the display case. The glass paperweight rolled across the floor, clinking cheerfully. "Please," Gavin begged, backing into the desk. "I just want the stone. Take it. I'll leave." "The stone is glass, you idiot," a female voice cut through the terror. The overhead lights slammed on, blindingly bright. Jin was sitting in the high-backed leather chair behind the desk, spinning a pen. She looked bored. Cal stood beside her, a looming shadow of vengeance. "Glass?" Gavin blinked, shielding his eyes. "What?" "It cost $12.99, Jin said, checking her watch. "You broke into a fortress protected by 20 werewolves for a paperweight. I'd say I'm disappointed, but honestly, your accounting was always sloppy." "Jin?" Gavin gasped. You're working with them? They're monsters!" "They're my clients," Jin said coldly. "And you, Gavin, are a liability." Chapter 33. The Confrontation. Gavin looked from Jin to Cal. He saw the bond between them, the way Cal stood slightly in front of her, shielding her, and the way Jin looked completely relaxed next to a man who looked ready to rip a throat out. "He'll kill you too," Gavin spat, trying to regain some leverage. "Once he loses his temper. They're animals, Jin. I was trying to do the world a favor by wiping them out," Cal roared. It was a deafening sound that shook the books off the shelves. He lunged. "Cal, wait," Jin said softly. She didn't shout. She just placed a hand on his forearm. Cal froze mid-lunge. His claws were inches from Gavin's face. Gavin pissed himself, literally. A dark stain spread across his trousers. "He's not worth the dry cleaning bill," Jin said, looking at the stain with disgust. "And he's definitely not worth prison, Cal. If you kill him, the council investigates. It's a headache." "He poisoned us," Cal snarled, his restraint hanging by a thread. "He deserves to bleed." "He deserves worse than bleeding," Jin corrected. She turned her laptop screen around so Gavin could see it. "Hi, Gavin," Jin smiled, and it was the scariest thing Gavin had seen all night. "So, I've been live-streaming this whole interaction. Not to the public, that would be messy, but I did send a private link to 2 groups of people." She held up one finger. "Group A, the Briarcliff Police Department. They're on their way to arrest you for breaking and entering, grand larceny, and corporate embezzlement." She held up a second finger. "Group B, the Viper Syndicate. I sent them your GPS location, and I let them know you don't actually have the money." Gavin's face went white. You didn't." "I did. The police are about 5 minutes out. The Vipers, well, they drive fast. I'd say you have about 3 minutes to decide who you want to be arrested by." Gavin scrambled to his feet. He looked at the window. He looked at Cal. "I'll take the police!" he screamed. "Call the police!" "They're already here," Jin said as sirens wailed in the distance. Cal stepped back, the amber fading from his eyes. He looked at Gavin, shaking, wet and pathetic, and then at Jin. He smiled, a slow, dark expression of satisfaction. "You are vicious," Cal whispered to her. "I'm efficient," Jin replied, closing her laptop. "Rogan, get in here and drag this trash to the curb, and make sure he doesn't drip on the rug." Rogan burst in from the garden, still covered in leaves, grabbed Gavin by the collar, and hauled him out like a sack of potatoes. As the door closed, Cal turned to Jin. He lifted her off the chair and kissed her hard, the static shock lighting up the room. "Remind me," he murmured against her lips, "never to make you angry." Chapter 34. The New Regime. 6 months later, Drivas Manor was no longer a gloomy Gothic nightmare. It was a masterpiece of restoration. The gardens were blooming, the stone was scrubbed clean, and the interior was a perfect blend of historic charm and modern efficiency. But the biggest change wasn't the architecture, it was the management. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Cal walked into the Great Hall, looking for his enforcers. He needed to organize a perimeter patrol for the upcoming full moon. He found Rogan, Silas, and 3 other top wolves in the middle of the floor. They were surrounded by flat-pack cardboard boxes. They were sweating. They looked more stressed than they had during the Gavin incident. "Report!" Cal barked. Rogan jumped, dropping a hex key. "Alpha! We are busy." "Doing what? We have a perimeter check in 10 minutes. "We can't," Silas whispered, looking terrified. "The Luna, she ordered us to assemble the guest room furniture. It's IKEA." Cal stared at them. "You are apex predators. You can run 40 miles an hour, you can crush bone with your jaws, and you are defeated by a particle board dresser?" "The instructions make no sense," Rogan cried, holding up a diagram. "Why are there so many screws left over?" "Leave it," Cal ordered. "Patrol, now." The wolves hesitated. They looked at Cal. Then they looked at the stairs, where Jin's office was. Rogan shifted his weight. "With respect, Alpha. She said if this wasn't done by 5 p.m., she wouldn't make the spicy beef stew tonight. She said we'd get salad." Cal froze. "She threatened salad?" "Kale salad, sir, without dressing." Cal sighed. He looked at his elite soldiers, cowed by the threat of leafy greens. He looked at the unfinished furniture. He walked over, took off his jacket, and rolled up his sleeves. "Give me the hex key," Cal grumbled. "Rogan, you hold the side panel. Silas, find the dowels. If we work together, we can finish this in 20 minutes. I am not eating kale." Jin watched from the balcony above, holding kimchi. "Look at that," she whispered to the dog. "I have completely domesticated them." Kimchi let out a short, approving bark. Chapter 35. Epilogue. The Truce. The epilogue took place on a Sunday. Auntie May had officially adopted the Iron Ridge Pack. She visited every Sunday, bringing Tupperware containers filled with enough japchae and dumplings to feed an army. Which, essentially, she was. The scene in the solarium was chaotic. Rogan was letting Auntie May pinch his cheeks while he ate a dumpling in one bite. Silas was showing her pictures of his new puppy, a real dog, which confused everyone. Jin sat on the patio swing, a glass of iced tea in her hand. She looked out over the estate. Her estate. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the restored stonework. Cal sat down next to her. The swing creaked under his weight. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her into his heat. "You look happy," he said. "I am," Jin admitted. "The house is fixed, the accounts are balanced, and I haven't had to threaten anyone with a taser in weeks." "A boring life," Cal teased. "Peaceful," she corrected. "I like peaceful." Just then, Kimchi waddled out onto the patio. He stopped in front of them. He looked at Cal. For months, it had been a cold war. Snarls, side eyes, ankle bites. Cal reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a store-bought treat. He pulled out a piece of A5 Wagyu beef jerky, house-cured by the pack's chef specifically for this moment. He held it out. "Peace offering, little Alpha?" Kimchi sniffed the air. The scent was irresistible. He looked at Jin, as if asking for permission. "Go ahead," Jin laughed. "He's trying his best." Kimchi stepped forward. He didn't snatch it. He took the beef gently from Cal's fingers. He ate it with dignity. And then, for the first time ever, he didn't walk away. He sat down. He leaned his furry body against Cal's leg and let out a content sigh. Cal looked at Jin, his eyes wide with triumph. "Did you see that? He leaned. That's a lean of acceptance." "Don't cry," Jin warned him, though she was smiling. I'm not crying, it's allergies. Cal stroked the dog's ears, looking more proud than he had when he defeated Gavin. I have finally won. You won the dog, Jin said, resting her head on his shoulder. You won the house, and you won the architect. The architect was the hardest part, Cal murmured, kissing the top of her head. But she was worth every broken beam. And so, the Alpha King learned that true power isn't about claws or growls. It's about knowing how to assemble IKEA furniture, respecting the corgi hierarchy, and loving the woman who was brave enough to fix him. This has been a production of Linas Romantasy collection. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of romance, fangs, and renovations.